Serves him right, said Perrin. To be perfectly honest, I thought he had brought it on himself. Not only that, but all three of these women were pretty girls with black hair. He couldn't have made his type more obvious if he had tried. Maomao munched on a tea snack. Black hair? Joker asked, unconsciously touching her own dark locks. She thought of her client from a month before. He had been a soldier too. Ho. You are every bit as beautiful as I would expect of one of the most storied residents of such a famous house. Your lustrous black hair is particularly stunning. Say, Maomao, do you happen to know the dead man's name? She asked. HRM, what was it again? Maomao thought for a moment. I'm pretty sure it was Wang Fang. Fang? That was the name of the man Willow Boy had introduced to her. Joker heaved another sigh. What's the matter, Joker? Perrin asked. I think that man might have been a customer of mine. Wow, really? Talk about your coincidences, Maomao said, almost as surprised as her sister. Joker felt a creeping gloom. She wondered what to do, debating whether she should bring it up. After a moment she took the trick box from her desk. Isn't that the thing you said was a memento of your mother? Maomao asked. Something like that. Joker took out the broken jade tablet and placed it in front of Maomao. And there it is. The proof that she is a nobleman's illegitimate child, Perrin said with amusement. She knew Joker's routine with this stone. A month ago a man named Fang asked me to sell this to him, but I said no. Really? Maomao's eyes went wide as she studied the old tablet. He came to me because he thought I might be some forgotten child of the imperial family. I kept it ambiguous like I always do, and sent him on his way. I see, so he is dead. He certainly had the air of a playboy. Joker almost had to admire the nerve of stringing along 3 different women at once. Still, it nagged at her, and Maomao was even more sensitive to such things than Joker. She continued to study the jade intently. Then she said, Joker, what kind of man did you say gave you this jade? Joker had told Maomao the story just once, many years ago. According to the woman who bore me, he was a handsome man with a noble air. According to the other courtesans, he was good-looking but smelled like an animal. By their accounts, he did not really seem much like a member of the imperial family. Maomao clapped her hands. That's right. You said you thought he was a bandit who must have stolen this thing and unloaded it here. His being a thief seems more likely to me than his being an imperial family member, Joker replied. She had no real interest in whose seed she had sprung from, at least not anymore, so he smelled like a beast. Any other distinguishing features? He had gnarled hands. No one of true noble lineage would have weathered hands, would they? I'm not sure that's quite true. Maomao was still staring at the stone. She served in the palace, so she likely knew more about the Imperials than Joker did. Perrin was not very interested in the conversation and was stuffing her face with tea snacks. Maomao was muttering to herself. She said, from the colour, this looks like rock and jade. It is valuable stuff. The surface looks shaved down before it was broken. I am guessing the original size was about 9 centimetres. Finally she said, Joker, may I touch it? Go ahead, may I chip it a bit? What do I care if it gets a little more beat up at this point? Perrin, lend me your hair stick. Here you go. Maomao jabbed the jade with the tip of the hair stick. Joker said she did not care if it got a bit more damaged, but Maomao's enthusiasm still surprised her. Then Maomao measured the depth of the score. This is jadeite, she declared. She handed the hair stick back to Perrin and said, here, thank you. Did you learn anything? Perrin asked. This tablet is made of jadeite, a hard material. The damage to the surface did not occur naturally. It was deliberately scraped away, and that was done before the tablet was broken. My, I wonder why they would scrape the tablet. It would only make it less valuable. I do not know why they would break it in half, but I suspect I can explain the scraping. Maomao's fingers brushed the tablet's broken surface. Well, why? Nobles and imperials sometimes find their lives in danger from members of their own family. Someone wanted to make sure nobody knew Joker was the offspring of such a family. Throughout history, imperial succession had frequently inspired wars in which blood was washed away with more blood. The books in Joker's room furnished endless examples, and he only scraped the surface. Why wouldn't he just throw it away? Perrin asked lightly. Some things you can't bring yourself to get rid of, even if you want to. Joker put the jade tablet away. That was enough of that. You don't happen to know where the other half of that tablet is, do you, Joker? Maomao asked. I haven't the foggiest. Didn't think so. There seemed to be something Maomao still wasn't telling Joker. But if she was keeping it to herself, then it probably meant that she couldn't talk about it, or at least that she thought it was better not to. Joker did not push her. If every mystery surrounding the jade was solved, Joker would no longer be Joker. Until she was ready to retire from the courtesan's life, being Joker was how she supported herself. She needed a bit of mystery. Chapter 13. Yao and the return of Lahan's brother. Yao had learned quite a few skills while Maomao was in the western capital. Forceps now, yes sir. She had begun to assist during the doctor's surgeries. This patient had shattered a bone in their arm, and they needed to extract the shards. She was only standing by as a helper, but just being there was enough to make her stomach turn. The stench of blood, the man's muffled screams as he bit down on the gag in his mouth, and the bone sticking out of his arm at an unnatural angle were all unsettling. Covering her mouth and nose provided only the slightest relief. Still, Yao fought back the nausea and handed over the forceps. After the surgery was finished, Yao retched copiously. Nen rubbed her back while Maomao brought her some water. "Thank you," she said, "but the two of you should go back to work." "Understood," Maomao answered and promptly left. Nen, however, hung around looking concerned. "Lady Yao, you mustn't push yourself. I can do it for you," she said. Yao had admonished her not to call her young mistress while they were at work. "Nen, this is my job. Dr. Liu finally agreed to let me do this. Please don't take that away from me." Yao had spent the past year industriously dissecting livestock. She'd experienced what it was like to kill them and could separate out their internal organs. Human bodies, though, those she still wasn't used to. She cleared the contents of her stomach one final time, then went back to work. Maomao was cleaning the implements that had been used in the surgery, taking care not to cut herself as she washed off the blood and fat and boiled the tools to disinfect them. The disinfection process was something the palace physicians did as a matter of course, but apparently it was a revolutionary idea. You could succeed in a surgery and yet lose the patient because there was some poison on the tools you'd used. Yao stood beside Maomao. Nen was busy with a task one of the doctors had requested. "Here, Maomao, I will help you. All right. Could you cool and wipe down the boiled scalpels?" "Sure." She had to make sure the tiny knives were completely dry. It was a very important job because the blades were prone to rust. As Maomao washed each scalpel, she closed one eye and studied it, checking to make sure the blade wasn't chipped. If there were any imperfections, the blade would be polished. If that still didn't work, it would be swapped out for a new scalpel. Maomao herself was beginning to be entrusted with not just helping with treatments, but doing them herself. She had always seemed comfortable treating the wounded, but since her return from the western capital, she had clearly taken a step up. Otherwise, Dr. Liu would never have skipped over other physicians to have Maomao perform procedures. This was clearly well outside the bounds of a palace lady's job description. Maomao's name was never actually recorded as the person wielding the knife. This was as far as a palace lady assisting the medical officers could hope to go at this moment. No matter how good she was at her job, she would never be put forth publicly. That pained Yao, so she believed it must hurt Maomao even worse. But to all outward appearances, Maomao hardly seemed bothered. Yet here Yao was, her head constantly spinning not just with work but with so many other things as well. "Hey, Maomao," she asked. "Yes, do you ever, worry about things?" Yao found herself being much more direct than she had meant to be. Would Maomao think Yao was making fun of her? "Sure, lots of things," Maomao replied, unruffled. "Lots of things, like what?" After a second, Maomao said, "Like human relationships." Wah, Yao's heart skipped a beat. Was Maomao talking about her? She wondered, but she was afraid to ask too directly. Yao looked Maomao in the face, wondering who she could be talking about. Eventually Maomao said, somewhat awkwardly, "There are all these freaks around, "Oh, freaks. Right." Maomao wouldn't say it in so many words, but she was referring to her birth father, Grand Commandant Kan. People often called him the freak strategist, and for a while he had gone virtually everywhere Maomao did. It certainly couldn't have been easy, Yao reflected. Her uncle was always on her case, but at least she didn't have strange folks chasing her here and there. "It's tough, huh?" Yao said. "Yes, very tough." Yao, feeling relieved, went back to wiping down the now cool scalpels. They had just finished washing the blades when they heard footsteps approaching. They were distinctive, tapping, rhythmic footsteps. "Hello, Miss Chu is here." Striking a funny pose was as she'd identified herself, Chu. She was a lady in waiting to the Moon Prince, probably a few birthdays past her 20th. During their time in the western capital, she had been attacked by bandits and seriously wounded. Her right arm was almost useless, and she'd broken her collarbone and even damaged some internal organs, but she seemed in high spirits just the same. "Phew, another day of intense pain, huh? I'd like to ask for an exam and some medicine, but pretty please mix the medicine with lots of honey." "Oh, you there, could you get me some hot tea?" No sooner had Chu entered the medical office than she sat down as if it were the most natural thing in the world, demanding a drink from the nearest apprentice physician. She also helped herself to some of the tea snacks. Could she be any more audacious? Dr. Liu gave her a cold stare. Being the tough man of medicine he was, he probably wished he could chase her out, but he was forestalled by the Moon Prince's orders. Recently, Dr. Liu had been keeping the medical office assistants close when doing his work. Maybe it was because of Chu's frequent visits. He may have hoped that having other women around would set her at ease. Yao frankly wondered whether such consideration was necessary at all in Chu's case, but there was certainly no avoiding the reality that the woman would bear this wound for the rest of her life. Miss Maomao, share a cup of tea with me. And you, the young lady over there, you come too, Chu said, indicating Maomao and Yao. Yao could see at a glance how close Maomao and Chu were. That was only natural since they had spent a year together in the western capital. But Yao suddenly felt the urge to point out that she had known Maomao longer than Chu had. Miss Chu, I'm at work now, so I'm afraid not. And so is Miss Yao. It's true. We are working. That was the most diffident answer Yao could muster. Chu might think her rather boring, but Yao had never had much of a gift for humor. Goodness gracious, that is such a shame, Chu said. More importantly, how have you been feeling? Maomao asked, and Yao could hear in her voice that it wasn't just a polite question. She was really concerned. Oh, I can't laugh with a broken collarbone. And when I try to sleep, the pain is just awful. Boil some medicine for her, Maomao, Dr. Liu said brusquely. And give her some painkillers for bedtime. He mostly left Chu-related matters to Maomao, who rumor had it had been the first one to treat the injured Chu. All right, Miss Maomao. Please give me lots of honey, lots of citrus, and as little medicine as possible. I'm afraid I only have huge heaping helpings of medicine. Maomao ground up some herbs in a mortar, then put them in a cup and mixed in plenty of honey and citrus. Oh, you're no fun. Maomao, looking as if she were finding this a great deal of trouble, topped the green sludge with the tiniest excuse for a wolfberry and put a straw in it. Chu drank it down, making a sour face. Was it inappropriate if Yao felt a twinge of jealousy at their easy back and forth? These are painkillers for before you go to bed, Maomao said, handing Chu a paper packet. If you're not in any pain, you don't need to take them. That's a big help. I can't even turn over in my sleep. At first, Yao had thought Chu must be exaggerating, but when she saw the bandages on her hand and the wounds that ran all the way from her chest to her belly, she began to wonder what manner of beast had attacked the woman. For a mere lady in waiting to be seen by one of the most highly ranked physicians in the palace would normally have been unconscionable. The fact that it was happening anyway attested to just how great Chu's achievements must have been. Despite not knowing Chu very well, the best Yao could think was, who is this weirdo? Oh, that reminds me, Miss Maomao. Chu fished 2 letters from the folds of her robes. I have letters for you. Miss Chu is not a goat, so don't worry, she wouldn't eat them. And neither would your goat because you left it back in the western capital, didn't you? Yes, much like how we forgot your poor brother, we don't talk about that. Maomao made a big X with her hands. Oh, don't worry. He'll be home very soon. His ship should arrive any day. I'm glad to hear that. Yao, who had no idea what any of this meant, started to feel a little left out. At the same time, she didn't have it in her to simply jump into the conversation. Maomao studied the letters intently. They didn't say who the sender was, but the handwriting and paper seemed to give her a good idea. Yao regarded one of the letters with a scowl. She looked at the other with what Yao took to be steely resolve. You come here when you've had your medicine. I'll change your bandages, said Dr. Liu. Yes, sir, right away, sir, Chu said and trundled into the exam room. You too, Maomao? Yes, sir. Yao, could you take care of the rest of these? Yeah, sure. The doctor had summoned Maomao as well, so only Yao was left to finish wiping down the scalpels. When Yao's shift was over, she went back to Lacan's estate. Someone was waiting for her. Lady Yao, welcome. I've found a new place you might like. What do you think? It was the servant called Sanfan who approached Yao holding the blueprints of a house. Sanfan looked like a handsome young man at first glance, but in fact she was a woman in men's clothing. It was notable that she greeted Yao not with welcome home, but simply welcome. You could move here just to try it out. If you do not like it, you could move again. I will find as many places as you need. Sanfan sounded very solicitous, but this was a roundabout way of saying get out. At that point Inen appeared, putting herself between Sanfan and Yao. Young mistress, you must be tired. How about a bath, she said. Then she turned to Sanfan. Sanfan, the young mistress is tired. Perhaps we could talk about this later. Heh, how kind of you. It looks like you are going somewhere yourself. Are you sure you do not need to hurry, Yao said. She had grown up a little herself. Instead of getting openly angry, she responded with her own equivalent of hurry up and leave. Ah, yes, we will be having visitors today. The two of you can feel free to relax in the annex, Sanfan told them. Then she left, the resentment practically radiating off her. NN watched her go, a conflicted expression on her face. What's the matter? Yao asked. Normally NN would have hissed and spat at Sanfan as she left, but today she did nothing. In fact, she had been acting a bit unusual ever since her recent day off. Such bad taste, NN was mumbling. Who has bad taste? What kind of taste? Oh, it's nothing. NN prepared a change of clothes and a towel. The annex on Lacan's property where Yao and NN were currently living had no bath of its own. Instead, they had been given a particularly large bucket that they could use in lieu of a tub. At first they had borrowed the bathtub in the main house, but that servant, Sanfan, had gone out of her way to give them the bucket. Once again, it seemed like an act of kindness on the surface. The message seemed to be that they should not use the house's bathtub. Sanfan clearly felt hostility toward Yao, and Yao was none too fond of Sanfan either. Come on, young mistress. Let's wash up, NN said. The hot water was already waiting for them. Sifan, another of Lacan's servants, was still young, but he was sharp. He had judged when Yao and NN would get home and had made sure the water was ready. NN added some cold water to the hot water so it would be the perfect temperature. Yao took off her clothes and got in the bucket. She wished she could scrub herself down before she got in the bath bucket, but they didn't exactly have the facilities. It would have been tough. NN began to wipe Yao's arms and legs with a soft cloth. No matter how many times Yao told NN that she could bathe herself, she never seemed to listen. Lady Yao, young mistress, NN said. Yeah, NN, what is it? NN wet down Yao's hair and began massaging her scalp. Now that Maomao is back, I wonder if it might be about time for us to think about moving out. She sounded like she was gauging Yao's reaction. Maybe. Moving is so much work. We can take our time and think about it. Yao found that the pleasantly warm water was making her drowsy. It had been almost a year since Yao and NN had taken up residence at Lacan's mansion. At first, it had just been a way of escaping the various marriage proposals her uncle brought her. But then her uncle had gone to the western capital. So why was she still here? She was worried about her friend Maomao, that was why. She had extended her stay hoping to get some word of her. Well, now Maomao was back. What reason could she come up with next? Yao was perfectly well aware that her pretexts were flimsy in the extreme, not to mention they kept changing. Say, when do you suppose Master Lahan will get home? Yao asked. Not for a while yet, I would guess, NN replied. Yao could hear a tremble in her voice at the mention of Lahan's name. If we're going to move, I think maybe we should consult with him first. I really don't think there's any need, NN said firmly. She did not like Lahan, probably because he could be quite short with Yao. NN frequently spoke ill of Lahan. He had a fondness for older women and especially spent a lot of time with widows. He was obsessed with money, and despite being a public servant, he used his household help as proxies to do commercial business on his behalf. Not to mention that he had conspired with Lacan to help the old man take over the family headship, chasing out his own parents and grandfather in the process. NN always peppered these accusations with plenty of personal animus, but they weren't untrue. Yao understood that Lahan was not a good person in the strict sense, but his actions weren't those of a villain. Lahan was shorter than Yao, and it was hard to call him very handsome. He was quite smart but athletically hopeless. He always acted kind to women, but ultimately it was only on the surface. If you tried to go any deeper, he would promptly rebuff you. So, viewed as a man, was he attractive? The answer was absolutely not, at least not by Yao's standard, so why couldn't she get him off her mind? Yao knew very well that Lahan thought of her as nothing more than Maomao's colleague. He was decent to her as he would be to any acquaintance of his younger sister, but if she sought more than that, he immediately distanced himself. Yao knew very well that her attempts were hopeless. The closer she got to Lahan, the farther away he would move himself. Yet she had the distinct sense that if she distanced herself now, she would never be able to approach him again. It left her unable and unwilling to draw back. Call it shameless, ugly, or pathetic, Yao couldn't hold her peace. Say, NN, yes, what is it? Are you ever going to get married? Goodness, what brought this on? NN asked as she dried Yao off. Well, I know you're perfectly popular. You could have your pick. Certainly NN was the right age to be getting married. I serve you, Lady Yao. I have no intention of getting married until you are safely matched yourself, which you have no intention of ever letting me do, it appears. Perish the thought, milady, NN said, clearly shaken. Her hands quivered slightly as she passed Yao her clothing. If there should ever be a gentleman worthy of you, Lady Yao, I would gladly sew your wedding garments myself. Great. And what kind of man exactly would be worthy of me? Wah, NN was shocked again. Yao tied her sash and ran a comb through her damp hair. Well, NN said, when they went to the annex's living room, dinner was already set out for them. This was another act of consideration on Siffin's part. On days when NN had work, he would make sure dinner was prepared. NN oversaw the menu, so there was no question of the meal's nutritional balance. He would have to be. NN took a deep breath. She started speaking slowly at first, but then faster and faster, picking up steam as she went along. An adult man who had his act together,